Hey everybody, welcome to DOM 2 with Rhiannon for Web 42. Okay, so today is really, it's kind of more about the DOM. And it's okay if you're not really feeling at this point in time super confident in exactly what the DOM is and how it works and all of those kinds of things. That's absolutely okay. The only real way to ultimately understand what's going on with the DOM is to really play around with it. You got a bit of an opportunity to do that yesterday, and throughout the course of this week, you will be getting more opportunities to do that. And it really is a question of like, the more you get to interact with it, the more you understand how it works and how it functions. Actually, why don't we pull up Canvas? It seems like a good idea. Let me find Canvas. And we should probably check on our objectives. So I'm going to find those objectives for us. Okay, here we go. So that's DOM 1. And now we want to do today DOM 2. Okay, so let's have a look. So objective 1 is installing Node on Mac or installing Node on Windows. I'm kind of hoping that everybody has had a chance to do that. But actually, I'm just going to go into the Slack and ask everybody, are you all set up with Node? On Mac or Windows? And can I just get some thumbs up and thumbs down from everybody? Okay, so I'm seeing there's like at least there's many people who've got it all set up, a couple of people who haven't. If that is the case for you, you are still going to be able to do today's guided project without using npm or without using Node. But as of tomorrow, you will have to have it. So if you're in a situation where you're having any issues getting Node set up on your computer, please come to office hours today. Those kind of issues are the ones that we are going to absolutely prioritize in office hours, making sure everybody is set up. Okay, so with that being said, actually we can maybe check one or two things about Node. So a way to check whether or not you have it installed is if you want to know whether you have npm installed, you can do this. And as you can see, if you do npm-v, that stands for give me the version of npm. And the same thing is possible to do with Node as well. And if you do npm-v and node-v, and it's going to give you back a version number like this, you will know that you're all set up and running. Okay, so if we went to the repo today, this is obviously what I dropped into Slack. Of course, here is going to be pretty much the same process that we're going to follow every time that we do a guided project in Unit 2. So you can follow the link to the repo and then immediately come to the green button and copy to your clipboard the repo link inside of here. And the reason we want to do this is we are going to be cloning these projects without forking them. So don't fork them. And the reason for that is because you're going to be able to catch up with what I'm doing by using the git fetch and git reset --hard origin/lecture, which is dropped into Slack as well. Okay, so here is another run through of the process of how we kind of get our project up and running. So we've come over to the repo, we've clicked on the green button, we've come to the clipboard, and we have clicked this to copy this link to our GitHub. And now I'm going to navigate into my into my GP folder. My GP folder is where I keep all of the guided projects. And I keep it, as you can see, it's kind of in the root directory. It's like a very high level thing. I don't have to navigate too far down some kind of path in my file structure to find what I'm looking for. I really advise everybody keeps things really simple and maybe has one directory for guided projects, another one for sprint challenges, another one for module projects. That is a way of keeping things pretty organized. Okay, so now we are in the guided project directory. I am going to do git clone and then paste paste the repo from GitHub. And now, of course, I want to cd into web guided project DOM2. And then when I get here, I'll just make this a little bit bigger maybe. And so now I'm inside of my project in terminal. I want to now open up VS Code, and I'm going to do so like this by typing code space period and hit enter. And with any luck, fingers crossed, we should be opening up VS Code. Although actually, funnily enough, that doesn't seem to have worked, but it normally does. I'm not sure what's going on there. It may just be being slow, possibly. I'm going to try that again. Oh, here we go. It's working this time, I think. I think it is working, but I think it's just being super slow to open for some reason. So I'm just going to kind of let that, see if I can like let that run for a second. Okay, so well, let's see. Well, that's definitely going to be a bit challenging if my VS Code is not going to work. I'm going to quit and try to like restart it. Okay. So with any luck. Here we go. I have a good feeling this time. Okay, there we go. Okay, for some reason it was just sort of stuck in some kind of state, and now I've managed to get it going again. Okay, so that is basically the process. So whenever I'm opening up a new guided project, the place where I'm always going to go, or module project, or actually any project that you ever do, the very first place that you want to go is to the README. And the reason you want to do that is because it's going to give you the instructions to get the project up and running on your local machine. So we've actually already done step one. We've cloned the project from GitHub. And now it says, using your command line, navigate to the project folder. We did that in terminal as well. And now it's telling us to run npm install. This downloads all dependencies listed in the package JSON file. Okay, so let's have a look at the package JSON file. Okay, so it looks like we've got, we have some dependencies in here. We've got dev dependencies, which is ESLint and parcel bundler. So if we run npm install now, let's do that. So we can do npm install. And as you can see, I'm doing this in the integrated terminal inside of VS Code, and that is where I suggest you do that as well. And the way that I'm toggling it open and close like so is by using control backtick. I think that's the case for both Mac and Windows, but that's something that you might want to check. Anyway, so I'm now going to hit npm install. And as we do so, keep an eye on what's going on the left-hand side inside of our file browser. I mean, yeah, sorry, our file explorer right here. We should start to see something pop up in a minute, a new directory. And perhaps if I hit refresh, yes, okay, so I use this little button here to hit refresh. And now, as we can see, we have this whole node modules directory now living inside of our project. We've downloaded all the dependencies we need, so that's great. Let's now go back to the README to check the next step. So now it's saying run npm start. This compiles the project and launches a development server. Okay, let's do that. So npm start. Okay, and so another really nice thing about VS Code here is that if we come to, if we hover over this link inside of our terminal here, and we can follow it by doing command click. But before I do that, I actually just want to point out that if you are somebody who does not have npm or node up and running and working yet, today's module project can still, guided project can still be done using, by navigating to the file explorer, I believe, inside your kind of like Finder or whatever it is on Windows, and you can do right click to open up the index.html, and that should take you to a Chrome browser page with that in. So if you're in that situation, please do it that way. But for the moment, we're just going to do it in the way that it's also telling us to do it in the README. Okay, so I did command click on the link inside of the terminal right here. That's how I generated this. And actually, I think I'm going to try and have these things side by side on the screen for a second, just to make it a bit clearer. So I'm going to do that. And let's see if we can kind of do it like this. Hopefully this will give us enough kind of real estate to sort of see what's going on. Okay. And just another thing to note, the process that's currently running inside of terminal right here, this is a blocking process. So long as the server is up and running, we can't come into this terminal and start typing other commands. So if we need a new terminal to run some other command, we have to do something like hit the plus button here. And now we have a new integrated terminal. So if we have any other things that we want to install, for example, I mean, we're not going to do this today, but we might want to do npm install some other package like Axios. You would have to do that in a separate terminal like so. But I actually am going to use this separate terminal. So don't follow along with the thing that I'm doing right now. The thing that I'm doing right now is I am making sure that you can catch up with any code that I write in the course of this. So this is just me getting this script up and running. So prep start GP. Okay. So with any luck, this should end up pushing all of the code that I write to GitHub every 45 seconds. And then you can use the catch up command that has already been dropped into Slack earlier today to catch up. Okay, so that should be up and running. Okay, so now I'm going to close down the terminal and kind of see what we are. Okay, so what is now? Okay, great. So we've done all of the steps, I think, inside of the README, so we don't need that for a moment. And if we come over to our Chrome, so the very first thing that I always do when I'm pulling up a new project in Chrome is I hit Option Command I to open up the DevTools in Chrome. I can't remember exactly what it is for Windows, but make sure that you know the command to open up and close the console. In Chrome, it's really critical that you do that because you're going to be opening and closing that console a lot. And another just kind of general tip here is that I can never work on a project like this without having up the console and obviously the project itself and the code. I need all of this information at the same time to be able to do a project. Okay, so what have we got? In the console, we just see what it says here. It says project is up. Okay, cool. So that's like a nice little helpful thing. It's telling us that the project is up. And as we can see, we've got this very simple application here. It's just saying, hello world, ready to launch. And the thing that we're going to be building today is that when we click on this launch button, we're going to be launching a modal. And I know that kind of the word modal, that certainly didn't mean anything to me when I first started web development, or it did, but I didn't know what it meant in this context. So let's have a look at that. So like component, it's because it's a type of component. So component modal. Okay, so I'm just kind of Googling this to kind of try to give you some idea of what a modal is. It's kind of like a pop-up. So what does it say here? It says the modal component provides a solid foundation for creating dialogues, popovers, light boxes, or whatever else. Okay, and let's maybe have a look at a picture of it. Okay, so I think this is actually a pretty good example of a modal. I'm not going to read any of this stuff. I just actually want to look at this. Look at this picture here, what it shows us is that we've got this this is the modal right here. This is kind of like the front. This is front and center for us. The rest of the website has been kind of grayed out, and that's what we are going to be building today. We're going to be building something that when we click on that launch button, it's going to build a little modal like this. And the way that this kind of relates to all of the DOM stuff that you were doing yesterday and you will be doing today is because today is all about scheduling DOM surgery. And when I say DOM surgery, the thing that I'm referring to is making changes to the DOM. So for example, adding an element or removing an element or changing a color or adding some text content. All of those things I would say are examples of DOM surgery. They are changes to the DOM. And so yesterday we learned about some of those ways that we can interact with the DOM. But it's not really realistic to set up our JavaScript to interact with a DOM in exactly the way that we did yesterday. We were learning all that so we can understand how to interface with the DOM interface. But a more realistic way of using the DOM is that we want to set up functions inside of our JavaScript that are going to be things like event listeners and event handlers. And what these do is they listen to user behavior. So for example, let's go back to, don't need that anymore, don't need that anymore. Let's come back here. And so an example of user behavior would be, of course, for example, a click. So a user might do something like click on a button. And when that happens, we want some function to run to make the event happen that should be happening when the user is doing the clicking on the DOM, on the button. And so that kind of means that we are not running our code. We're not running the JavaScript ourselves. We are scheduling some JavaScript. We're scheduling a function to actually run, not when we run our code, but when the user does something like interacts with the website in any way, with our web page in any way. Other examples of user behavior would be, for example, like typing into a text box, or what else would it be? Like, like scrolling up and down a page. There are so many possible things that users do. I mean, of course, but a really big one that we always are using on web is, buttons. So that's probably, so clicking on buttons is probably what we're going to be focusing on a lot today. But yeah, we can set up event listeners to listen to any user behavior, any user interaction with our app. And when the user does the interaction, we want a listener function that is going to trigger when that button is clicked, and that is going to call our event handler function. And our event handler is actually going to handle the DOM surgery, which is to say that perhaps when we click on this launch button, we want to add to the DOM a modal, for example. Okay, so let's actually kind of have a look at where we might want to go. Let's actually have kind of a closer look at the code. So I'm actually going to make this full screen for a second, if I can. So frustrating. Okay, actually I can do it like this. Okay, so we know what our project looks like in Chrome. So for the moment, let's just for a second come and have a look at some of the code. So I'm coming back into VS Code. I'm clicking on source. Inside of most projects, inside of the SRC or source file, that's where most of the code that we're going to be writing actually lives. And I think the first place we want to go is our index.html. And actually, what's kind of interesting about this is that we can see that our project was super, super simple in Chrome, but actually there's quite a lot more code here than we can actually see on the screen. So for example, we know that we have this, we know that we have that button where, we know that, first of all, we have the nav, these two navs, and they of course relate to the two links. If we have a look at that. So that's the first link, that's the second link, okay. And then we have this span that says, hello world, ready to launch. We saw that. And then we have a button, which we also saw. I was kind of clicking on it a few times, but it didn't do anything. So that's really, at the moment, all of the HTML that we can actually see is basically from lines 13 to 19. However, we've got all of this other stuff here on lines 20 to 30. And these 10 lines of code, we actually can't see them. But what we're going to do today is we're going to be using JavaScript to create this and mount it to the DOM or remove it from the DOM, depending on user interaction, depending on whether a user has clicked a button or not. So the idea is, I think, so let's actually take a closer look at this. So it looks like, so there's a div here. So first of all, there's a div, and it has a class of modal, and it has a class of off. And actually, if we come down here to this H1, we get a class of off and another class of off. And it is this class of off. Removing or adding that class is going to be the way that we reveal or hide this code from the DOM. Okay, so let's see. If we actually delete this one on line 20, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to save it. Now let's come back here, and as you can see, we are now actually revealing this bit of the HTML. So as you can see, whether or not this is visible, whether or not we can see this modal is entirely determined by this off class name. And so I'll put that one back for the moment, but let's remove these two on lines 28 and 29. So I'm going to save that. And let's come back here. And as you can see, we've actually got two messages. And so it seems like we have kind of three things to play with. First of all, when we click the button, the launch button, we want to launch that modal. So let's have a look at that modal one more time. And actually, I'm going to once again kind of split the screen so I don't have to hop around so much. Okay, so we're gonna remove the, yeah, okay. So as you can see, we have this "Are you sure" modal, and then when we click on the yes, I think we want our launched Woot thing to appear. And if we say no, we want to cancel the launch, then we want the other H1 to appear. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So for the moment though, because the state that we want to start these things is off, I'm going to put these things back to off. Okay, and it is also time. Sorry that I've done quite a lot of talking at you this morning. I hope that that was kind of at least a good introduction to making things clear. For the moment, I'm going to set us our first 5-minute break, and I will see everybody in 5 minutes. Hi, everybody. We are back. Okay, so I think before the break, I was doing a lot of talking. So I'm actually going to get to see some responses from you in a second. So the first thing I actually want to look at really quickly before we actually start really writing some code is the kind of the head of our document right here. So if we come here and we come to line 8, we can see that we have in the head of this index HTML, we have a script tag. And it's saying that the source is going to be index.js. Okay, so let's have a quick look at that. What does that mean? So if we go and pull up index.js, you can see this is where all of our JavaScript code that we're going to write, that's where it's all going to live. So the way that this works is our index HTML is going to go and one of the very first things it's going to do is it's going to grab all the code from the index.js and make it run. As you can see, it's also got this defer tag in here as well. So this script tag has got a source of index.js. That's where all our JavaScript lives. And it's also got a deferred tag. Does anybody know what that deferred tag or attribute does? I've just dropped a thread into Slack. Anybody know? I can't remember whether this is in the warm-up material or not, but sometimes people have heard of it before or it sees it. Yeah, okay, so actually we've got one response in here set from Devin saying, yeah, it downloads the JavaScript at the same time. Yeah, that's right. Okay, and so kind of like, why would we want to do that? So what's going on here is the Chrome is passing this file like line by line, and Chrome is going to be constructing the DOM. And then it comes here. And then it actually says, wait, before you actually construct the DOM, go and grab all of the code in index.js. And the reason for that is because without the defer attribute, it's going to immediately start downloading that index.js and all the JavaScript in there. So it's going to, the reason this helps is because at this point in time, the DOM is not fully constructed. Without the defer tag, the script downloads and it will be executing before the DOM is constructed and before the document continues. And therefore, for example, like the button doesn't exist yet. Okay, so actually let's have a quick look to see what that looks like if we don't have this in here. So I've just removed the defer tag, and actually we can probably miss. I'm just going to remove it for the moment. Let's actually go ahead and start writing some code. So why don't we come into our index.js? Okay, so what's going to go on here? So we can see that we have that console log saying project is up, and we remembered when we opened up this up, we can see that indeed in our console, it does say project is up. I'm going to put this at the bottom. Yeah, that's better. There we go. Okay, hopefully this is going to be what we need. Okay. So it says task 1, select the following elements from the DOM. I'm actually going to drop this as a thread also into Slack because I think this is something that should be reviewed from yesterday, and I'm going to set a 2-minute timer, which I know is a very short period of time. So see how far you get in 2 minutes. And yeah, please drop your code under the inside the thread. Love to see what people get. Oh, and just to be really super clear about this, sorry to interrupt everybody. I'm talking about task 1 is set when it says the following elements from the DOM, it means these ones right here, A, B, and C. Okay, thanks everybody who managed to get something into the thread. I know that was a really, really short period of time. But yeah, let's go. So thank you so much, Michael and Carla. I think I'm kind of going to sort of steal your code and drop it in. So I'm going to start with some of the things that Carla did. Okay, so I'm going to grab the first one. Okay, so we're saying const launch button. And what's Carla got here? Okay, so we're doing document.query selector, launch button, like the ID launch button. Okay, so this task really required you to go back into the index HTML and find either IDs or classes or CSS classes to use our like document query selector that we hopefully learned about yesterday to grab those elements of the DOM. And all we're really doing here is we're just stashing a reference to this particular DOM element inside of this variable, for example, launch button. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. So I'm actually not even sure whose I'm stealing from here, but I'm stealing somebody else's from the thread. Okay, so the same thing is true with the confirm button and also the cancel button. So of course, like we could have called these things whatever we wanted. These are just variable names of our choice. And then we're just using our query selector, document.query selector, and then just finding the ID or the class name to grab the thing that we're most likely looking for. Okay, so what else do we have as well? Then we want to do the same with the success message and the failure message. So let's have a look at those. So it's an H1, and the kind of distinguishing feature of these is that one has a success and one has a failure. So we could probably do something like H1.success, H1.failure. So let's do that. And I'm grabbing these, I think, from Michael. Thank you so much. These are great. Dropping these in. Oh, why doesn't it like that? Oh, what's going on here? Unexpected token. What have I done? What have I done? Anyone see my bug? I'll try pasting it again. Maybe it was a bad paste. Okay, actually, yeah, I'm honestly not sure how I did that. Not sure what my like typo was there, but anyway, it looks fixed now. And the very last one is the modal. I think I'll drop that one in as well. Okay, and so yeah, we're doing the div.modal. If we come back to our index HTML, we can see that we have this class of modal and it's inside a div, so we can do div.modal, and that gets us everything we need. Okay, so the next thing I think we want to do is we maybe want to inspect some of these things. So we can also put in a debugger statement. The debugger statement is going to help us out because instead of writing console logs for each and every line of this code to check that it's right, we can simply write one debugger statement to figure out if all of the lines of code work. So we can put a debugger underneath the modal here. And then I'm just going to kind of give us a bit more space here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, how clear this is, but so I put the debugger statement in and then I saved it. And now I've been dropped into the debugger in Chrome. And as you can see, this is somewhere that is going to kind of give us quite a lot of information about the current state of our web app. So actually I hesitate to do too much kind of like, you know, switching out screens, but I'm going to make this kind of full screen for the moment so we can actually kind of have a look at what's going on. So as you can see, execution of our code has been paused. And it's been paused on this debugger line here on line 17. It doesn't look like we've constructed our DOM completely. And if we come here, we can actually see we've got things like cancel button, confirm button, failure message, launch button, all of the things that we just made variables for. And as you can see, currently their variables are null. But actually, if we do this, if we hit this button here, this one that says step over next function call, we can hopefully see our code execute line by line. So let's see what we can do. See if we can see this. Actually, I'm not sure that's taking me to the right place. We don't want that. We don't want that. Okay, you know what I think I'm going to have to do actually? I think I'm going to have to I'm going to delete this for the moment. And I'm going to close down the DevTools. And I'm actually going to delete these, not delete, but I'm going to comment out these 3 lines here, because I think that might be messing with our debugger. Okay, so I've done that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into Chrome, open up our DevTools once again. I'm going to go back and I'm going to put our debugger back, hit save. And now when I come back here, we should see, okay, I have a feeling this is now going to work a little bit better. Okay, well, let's see. We'll find out if it actually does. Okay, so now we should be able to keeping an eye on these where it says in scope, in local, we have these variable names. I'm hoping that we can jump into the next function call and see them become defined. Okay, but actually, for some reason, it looks like we're not doing that. So yeah, I'm actually not really sure why that's not working right now. Okay, well, in any event, even though we don't seem to be able to kind of walk through it step by step like that, hopefully we should now be able to actually have a look. Okay, so I'm going to pause script execution. Okay, I'm going to close down those tools. I'm not sure why I'm not stepping into the right function call at the moment, but I'll hopefully be able to demo that later. Okay, so having said that, let us, we'll pick up the debugger again later. I'm not actually quite sure why it wasn't working for us there. So let's just move on to task 2. Okay, so I'm going to delete the debugger for the moment. And now it says here, task 2, demo handling click events on the button, launch button using A, HTML inside the index.html, B, the DOM's element.onClick attribute, and C, the element.addEventListener method. Okay, so let's have a look at doing that. Basically, the reason we're doing these 3 things is because this is a little bit of internet history. So we're going to go and have a look at this is kind of the very old school way of doing it. So we're going to understand how that works first. And so it says here, let's go into the index.html. So index.html, and then it says demo handling click events on the button. Okay, so let's actually see how that works. So we need to kind of find the button wherever that is. That's on line 19. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a click handler right inside of the HTML. And the way that we can do that is by giving the button an on-click prop. And basically, this is going to make the button do a thing. So for example, on the click of a button, we could, for example, run a console log. So we could do console.log, and then, I mean, what do we want to console log? I guess we can console log something like setting the on-click using the HTML. Okay, cool. So let's see if this works. Let's see if we can get this to work. So I've saved that. Now let's come back to Chrome, and we can open up our console once again. So now the idea with adding this on-click attribute to the button is that when we click on the button, something should happen. So I'm going to click on the button, and as you can see, the action that we scheduled to happen when the button is clicked, it just happened. We console log this to the HTML. Okay, so this is really atrocious, but it is important that we know how to do it, because honestly, this is kind of, when we come back to React, we kind of are going to somewhat go back to this method of doing things. That will all become clear next week. Don't worry about it too much. But yeah, this is kind of the original way of doing things. This is the way this kind of code was written originally. Okay, so now we want to do B. So now we can, let's pull that back down. Okay, so it says B, the DOM's element.onClick attribute. All right, so how does that work? All right, let's see what we can do here. So we know that the button in question, we stashed that button inside of this variable inside our index.js, and we've called it launch button. So the first thing we're going to do is grab the launch button. And if you remember from yesterday, all of those attributes that DOM elements had, for example, set attribute, get attribute, inner text, text content, all of those things. So another thing that it has that we didn't look at yesterday is an onClick property. So we can do launch button dot onClick, and we can set this to be a function, which takes an event. And then we have these curly braces here, they open up. And inside these curly braces, and this is one of the key things to remember about today's guided project, inside these curly braces, we have the opportunity to schedule our future code. Our future code, by that I mean the code which is going to run when the user clicks the button. So the only place that we have the ability to perform any DOM surgery in if we are using onClick, if we are using event listeners like this, is between these two curly braces. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we can actually do basically the same thing that we did before. So we can just write a line of code that's going to run when the user clicks the button. And because this is a more modern way of doing it, I'm going to call this like about to smash the old school. Okay, so let's save that. And if we come back to our, oh no, we seem to have a uncaught type error, cannot set property onClick of null. Okay, so it says onClick is, so it's saying that the launch button is null. So that makes me think maybe, oh yes, that's exactly right. Devin, thank you so much. That's fantastic. I deliberately decided to trip myself up in this way, but I actually didn't remember to go back and fix it. Yes, so for the reasons that we were explaining earlier, and Devin is eagle-eyed and caught this, we deleted the defer tag from our index HTML. So for the reasons I was explaining before, of course, our launch button is no longer, it actually is not constructed yet because the DOM hasn't been constructed. So we need to wait to actually execute the index.js until the DOM is constructed. So for that reason, we can put back in our defer tag. And now if we come back here, we can see that actually that error has gone away and this should now work. Okay, so if we now hit launch, what we should expect is another console log. And so we've got it. We can see it says about to smash the old school. And the reason I wrote that is because as we can see, even though I never deleted the onClick handler from the button inside the index HTML, writing this new one inside the index.js, it's completely obliterated the old one. So it's still there in our code, but it's no longer actually working. Okay, so this is a better way of doing it than the original way that I showed you on line 19. So the way that we just did, it's a bit better. And one of the reasons it's better is because we have these curly braces here, we can actually schedule like multiple lines of code inside here. Whereas if you're inside the index HTML, you don't really have space to kind of do a lot of things. But inside the index.js, you've got plenty of room. But now we're going to learn the kind of the real way of doing it, the kind of good way of doing it. So the problem with this is that we can only fit one event handler, event listener, for example, the onClick. We can only fit one of those per DOM element. So it's better than the HTML, but it's not as good as the element.addEventListener syntax that we're going to have a look at now. So addEventListener is a method, not just a property, and it's going to take two arguments. The first argument, argument number 1, is going to be the type of event that we care about. And the second argument is going to be a callback function that will run some future functionality when that event is fired in the browser. So let's kind of have a look at what that means and see if we can pattern match. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that launch button again. And instead of doing onClick, like we just did, instead of that, we're going to use this addEventListener method. So as you can see here on line 21, our DOM element has this, which is the button. It has access to this property, which is called onClick, and it allows us to set onClick to be equal to a function. So the addEventListener is a little bit more generic. It's a bit drier because instead of doing it on click like that, we can actually do it like this. We can do click type it. And so we're actually able to listen to not just the clicks, but say we actually wanted to listen for like a scroll or I don't know, I'm trying to think. We could go to MDN and have a look at all the different events, but this is kind of, it allows us to choose any event that we want to listen for. So, but in this case, we're listening for a click because it's a button. So that's argument number one. That is the type of event we're listening for. I would have a look at on MDN. Maybe I'll just quickly show that now. So MDN event types. Okay, so event reference. So this here, I'm hoping it should give us like a list of these things. Oh yeah, so as you can see here, there's like, oh, look here, yeah, so, okay, this is good, this is great. So as you can see, these are all the kind of events that we can have on the document. So we can have a copy, a cut, we can have like dragging around, that's when you use your mouse to kind of drag stuff around like this. So we can have a drag event, a drop event for like drag and drop stuff. We can have key down, so like, you know, if you were to hit a key like the letter H, we could listen for that. Key up, that's when the user like removes their finger from the key. We can listen for that. Oh, we can listen for paste, like when a user pastes something in. Oh, a scroll event, as I was saying before. So many different events, as you can see, so many events. So actually, let's click on the scroll event. And what you're going to want to do here when you're using all these different events is you're probably going to want to come down to examples. So it says scroll event throttling. Okay, not even sure what that means. Don't even worry about it. Just come down to the examples. And what I would do is I would say like, okay, here, look, document.add event listener, and the event is scroll. And as you can just basically get an idea of the kind of code that you have to write to make the event listener work for scroll. So it kind of just gives you an example of the correct syntax. Very useful thing to know. Okay, but in this event, as I was saying, in this case, as I was saying before, we're just listening for a click. Okay, and so the second argument is going to be a callback. So just as we did before, or very similar to how we did before, we're going to write a function that takes an event. And we're going to do console.log, the better way to add future functionality. Okay, so ideally what should happen is if we go back to Chrome and we hit launch, we should expect to see both console logs from our index.js. Let's see what we get. Yeah. Okay, so we get about to smash the old school. That was the first one. That was the on-click. And the second one is the add event listener, the better way to add future functionality. Okay. So what's interesting about this is the whole console log function is declared right here on this line and another one on this line on line 22. But what's really interesting here is nowhere can you see in our code a spot where this function is actually being executed. The function is not being invoked inside of our code. The key thing to realize here is the reason is we, as writers of this code, are not executing it. What's super cool here is that the browser is executing it. And the reason that the browser is doing it is because the browser is smart and it knows when a user is clicking on a particular DOM element, in this case, a button. Okay, so maybe I'm going to quickly sort of change these two things. Maybe I'm going to change something here. Okay, so I'm going to do something like using the event listener. Just because I think that's kind of, for your notes, that's kind of going to be a clearer thing. And I just want to demo this one thing as well, which is unlike the on-click attribute with the add event listener method, we can actually add as many of these to an individual DOM element as we would like. So we can do console.log using the event listener again, just as proof that we can add as many of these add event listeners to a single DOM element as we choose to. So if we come back here, and if we click on our launch button again, we should see that, yeah, we get the first one, the about to smash the old school, and then we've attached 2 event listeners now, and both of those event listeners fire when we do the user action, which is clicking the launch button. Okay, so what else could we do? We can even add stuff like on the document itself. So for example, we could do, so instead of launch button, we could do document. So this is going to be now on the whole document. So we could do document.addEventListener. The first argument is the click, that's the type of user interaction we're looking for. And the second argument is this callback function. But instead of using the event listener, I'm going to be like clicking the document, Okay, so ideally now this should actually fire regardless of where we click. So if we kind of start clicking around just any random place on the document, every single time I do that, I'm getting this clicking the document console logged here. And as you can see, the number next to it is just adding up every time I do this. And what happens if I click on the launch button? That's going to be interesting. Okay, so currently we're at number 18. That's how many clicks I've done on the general document. Now I'm going to click the launch button. And what's interesting here is you can see that it ran all of the code that we scheduled to run when we click the button. And then it once more also said, and you're clicking on the document, because of course the launch button is on the document. So both of those two things fire. So what is really interesting to know about this is that what we can see is that the event object, which we're going to be having a look at in a moment, is that it knows what the intended target of the click is. So even if it is the most deeply nested HTML element, so for example, this button is nested more deeply in our DOM tree than is the document itself. The Chrome knows exactly what the target of that click was. It knows that the target of the click was the launch button, even though it's quite deeply nested. And so some other things to note. Okay, so let's have a look here. So we had a look at our document.addEventListener. We can give this event listener some conditional logic so that we can prove that it knows exactly where on the page it was clicked. Okay, so we've got console log, clicking the document. Now let's do some conditional logic. We can do if event.target is equal to the launch button, then console.log you clicked the launch button. Else, if I can spell else, there we go. Console.log you click something else. And so this is just going to prove that if we have a look at this thing here called the event target, which we have more of a look at when I can get that debugger working. Not sure why I couldn't get that debugger statement to work very well earlier. If we have a look at the event target, if the target is this particular DOM element, it's going to run this line of code on line 38. If it is not, if the target is not the launch button, if it's something else, it's going to run the line of code on line 40. So let's actually have a look at that. Okay, so now if we start. Oh, right, you might be right. Maybe it's because I've forgotten to put the defer. Huh, yeah, that is exactly why it wasn't working. Oh, I so totally tripped myself up there by not remembering to go back and do that debugger. Okay, so we'll have a look at that soon. Don't worry. Thank you so much, Ryder. I completely forgot that we did that. Okay, so as you can see, if we click somewhere on the document, clicking the document. Wait, I need to delete one of these. I need to comment out. Do I want to comment that one out? I think I want to comment that one out. Okay, so let's have a look. So if we click, it says you click something else. And if we click on this, it's saying that, yeah, we clicked on, it knows that we clicked on the launch button. It gives us you clicked on the launch button. Okay. So this is just an interesting idea. Generally, it means that we can wire functionality to the button. We actually don't necessarily have to select the button element in our code, because instead, as we can see, because the browser seems to know where we're clicking, we don't necessarily have to wire all of the functionality that we are doing to the lowest target. So for example, if we are doing the button, if we want to write some code to happen when we click the launch button, we don't actually need to set that event listener on the button. We could set it onto any parent element of that button. So for example, if we come back to our index.html, we can see that we have the button, but that is nested inside this div. So if we wanted to set an event listener instead on the div, which is like the parent of the button, we would be able to listen for the button from the parent. And this is because it of a phenomenon called bubbling, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Okay, so some other things to note. If we want to add an event listener to a collection of things, let's see if we can do something like that. Okay, so we have access to something called document.links. So document.links. Okay, and the reason we're doing this is because we want to understand that we don't just have to add event listeners to a single thing like one button or like one div. It's not necessary to do that. We can actually add event listeners to an array of things. So for example, if we come back over to our index.html, we can see that we've actually got inside of this nav here, we have two anchor tags. So we've got two links. And if we do something called document.links, that is going to give us access to all of the links, all of the anchor tags, the hrefs on a page. And it's going to return it to us in the form of, I think it's going to be an HTML collection. So actually what we want to do is we don't want to use this HTML collection because we're not going to be able to do everything we want to do. We're going to have to transform that HTML collection into a regular JavaScript array. And if you have something that you want to turn into an array in JavaScript, you can do this array.from. You can use this method here. It takes the argument that it takes is whatever it is that you want to turn into make into an array. In this case, we want to make the collection of links into an array. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to iterate over them. So we can use for each. And of course, for each, as we know, it takes a callback. And so for each link on the page, so for each link, we are going to do, we're going to add an event listener to each of those links. So we can do link dot add event listener. And then we're going to, we know the syntax for this already. We're going to do a click. That's what we're listening for. We're listening for when the user clicks on a link. And of course, we know that takes a second argument, which is the callback. Inside of the callback, we can run any code that we want to happen inside of here. We'll continue to look at this after the next break. But as you can see, just before we even get to the break, I think what's interesting to note here is that already at this point, our code is getting kind of complicated and difficult to read. We've got a callback here. This is the callback for our for each. And then inside that, we have another callback inside of our event listener. And you know what? In some ways, like this is what you might have heard of as callback hell. Okay, so two callbacks is not too bad, but these can become so deeply nested that it becomes almost impossible to parse the logic of the code. So we're going to see how to fix that issue and also just generally understand that problem. But for now, I will set a timer for a 5-minute break. And I will see everybody in 5 minutes. And during the break, I will also remember to post the attendance code into the Slack. Not the Slack, the Zoom chat. So keep a lookout for it in the Zoom chat. Okay, everybody, we are back. So we were actually just in the middle of doing kind of the one last thing that we want to have a look at to understand event listeners before we actually tackle the rest of the functionality, which I know it's a long time ago since the beginning of class at this point, but we're going to be able to click on this launch button and we're going to be launching a modal. And then there are going to be two buttons on the modal and like different messages are going to pop up when we hit either of those two buttons. That's where we're heading. Before we actually do that, we're just going to finish off looking at this, this document.links. As I was saying before, document.links grabs all of the links that happen to live in the document, which is to say it looks at the index HTML and it scours the index HTML for anchor tags. And then it puts these anchor tags into an HTML collection. And then we actually want to add event listeners to each and every one of those, well, in this case, just two anchor tags. And the way that we can do that is by using our for each. But before we use our for each to iterate over the array, we are going to use the inbuilt JavaScript method array from to turn that document.links collection into what is a real JavaScript array. And the reason that we want a real JavaScript array is that we can use our for each JavaScript method on a real JavaScript array. And okay, so that's what we're doing. We are iterating over this list of links. And then we are going to be adding for each of those individual links an event listener. And okay, so what might we want to do here? What can we do here? Okay, so one interesting thing is that, I mean, normally you might think we don't really need a click handler for links because actually the built-in functionality of links is that if you click on them, if you click on a link, it already does the clicking, it already does the navigating to a new web page. If you click on the event reference, yeah, it goes directly to those places if you click on either of those two links. But say we wanted to do something a little bit different. We actually want to avoid using the default behavior. So what we can do is we can prevent that functionality by grabbing that event object and doing something like prevent default. Actually, it's the second one there, event.prevent default. And then we can just invoke it with no arguments. And now I think it should stop linking anywhere. So if you now click on these, you can see we've disrupted the normal behavior of anchor tags. We've disrupted them. It's no longer clicking through. Okay, so now that we've prevented that default behavior, we can do something else. We can demo something called string interpolation. So actually, let's do that. So we could do something like this. We could say console.log, and then I'm going to use instead of it being in quotes here, it's going to be in backticks. So we're going to be doing disrupting the default behavior of. And just to be really clear here, the reason I'm doing this is really just to demonstrate all of the things that are going on with event listeners. It's not that you necessarily really want to stop links being clicked on necessarily, but I just want to show you kind of how some of these things work with it. And so here we're going to have a look at something called string interpolation. I'm not sure whether you've used that before yet already, but if you haven't, what we can do is we can write a string of text inside of backticks. And then we can use this $, curly braces, and then inside here, now we have access to JavaScript variables. So for example, we could do event.target, and if we remember from before, the event, it's a really big object with lots of different properties on it, and one of those properties is the target. And we know that the target is going to tell us exactly which DOM element it is. So it could be the button, it could be one of these two links. And we know that these links, these anchor tags here, they have text content. Text content of one is intro to events. Text content of this one is event reference. So we can actually grab that. We can do text content. And so now what we can do here is we can kind of write this. Yeah, let me actually do this just to make it super clear. Okay, so what we've got is we have this this string. And then we are grabbing the event.target.text content. Oh, oops. And we're going to be able to see how that logs out. So I'm going to save that. And like, let's now come here and let's have a look inside our console. So I'm going to click on the first one, intro to events. And it says, yeah, disrupting the default behavior of intro to events. And if we click on the event reference, disrupting the default behavior of event reference. Okay, so with that demonstration, let's now move on to task 3. And hopefully task 3 is, I'm going to try to make it the last bit of code I write. I'll do task 3, and then I'm going to try and get everybody else to help me with tasks 4 through 9, or actually just 8, I think. Okay, so task 3, create a function that launches. It should open the confirmation modal. Add it as an event listener for click events on the launch button. Okay, this makes sense to me as an instruction, because if we remember from before, we want to click on this launch button, and when we do it, it should open that confirmation modal. And if we just want to really quickly remind ourselves of what that is, I'm going to remove the off class name from it. And as you can see, we've now got our confirmation modal is appearing, but we're going to put the off class name back, because instead of doing it manually inside of our index.html, we're now going to use JavaScript to schedule that code to run. So it's going to look something like this. The very first thing that we have to grab is we have to grab the DOM element to which we want to add the event listener. So we can do launch button. And we know, just like we did before, we're going to be using an add event listener. And because this is a button, typically users click on buttons. So we're going to be listening for a click. That's argument number 1. Argument number 2 is our callback. So we're going to write our function, which takes an event. And now pretty much all of the DOM surgery that we want to happen is going to be done inside these curly braces by swapping those CSS class names selectively. So we just had a look to see what that class name was. Does anybody remember what was the class name? I'm just going to drop a thread into Slack. Does anybody remember what the name of that class name was? The class name that selectively can keep the modal hidden or appearing. Yes, yeah, exactly. Everybody who's jumped in has got it. It's off. It's the off class name. And do we remember where it was found? I think we do. It's on the modal itself. So it's actually on the modal. So if we come back up to kind of where our definitions are, we can see that we've stashed the modal inside of a variable called modal. So we can grab that now. We've got access to it. And okay, so I'm going to write a note here saying we have absolute power over the DOM here. And what we can now do is we can select that modal. And I think you must have had a look at the class list API yesterday. I'm hoping so. And we can use classlist.remove and then give that a class name. The one that we care about here is off. Okay, so let's see. That should work. So this should just be able to remove class list. So remember, this is not code that we're invoking. This is code that gets run inside the browser by the browser when the user actually clicks on something. So let's give it a go. Fingers crossed. Let's come and jump into launch. And there we go. Hey, our button works. It does the thing that we want it to do. As we can see, it launches this confirmation modal. So that's pretty great. Okay, so let's actually go back to the debugger and kind of have a look at that. Yeah, and have a look at that. Okay, apparently there's some issues with the attendance module, says it's locked. Okay, I'll deal with that in the next break. So everybody just hang tight and focus on the guided project, and we'll take care of that later. But thanks for bringing it to my attention. Okay, so what do we want to now do? Oh yeah, we want to see what happens in the debugger. So actually, I think, okay, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Okay, so I think what I want to do is I'm going to drop a debugger statement here. So we're currently inside our launch button event listener callback. That's where we currently are. And we can do something like, let's say that we misspell click. So accidentally we've done a typo and we've hit number 1 instead of I. And so this is going to cause maybe some kind of problem because that doesn't sound quite right, does it? Like that's maybe not something that the browser is going to recognize. So let's hit save. And this should hopefully immediately, oh, not immediately jump us into our debugger. It should jump us into our debugger statement when we click on the button. So now let's click on the button, launch. Oh, huh. That's interesting. We don't actually have any, we don't actually have a debugger. And the reason for this is because this function is actually just not working at all. Our code is broken. Our code is broken, but it's actually failing completely silently. It's not actually giving us, basically it's saying that the function isn't running. So a really, really good test to check whether your function is even running at all. If something isn't working, drop a debugger in, and then you can see if when you do the action, which should trigger the function to run, and the debugger, we don't jump into the console, we don't jump into the debugger, you can be pretty certain that function is not even running. So with that in mind, I will come back here and be like, oh, okay, my function isn't running because that's misspelled, that's a typo. So I'm going to hit save. And now if we come back in here, we should be able to hit launch. And here we go, now our debugger is working. Okay, so now we can actually kind of have a look at a few things. Okay, so for one thing, we can see, I think, that if we hover over, for example, this is the only thing I was going to show you earlier where I failed to add back in the defer tag. But if we come here, we have a look at the launch button. If we hover over it, we can see that it's actually been, this variable, it has been defined and is in the browser as defined. And as you can see, this thing here is the big object that actually is attached to every DOM element. So let's actually see, and as you can see, there are so many properties on side of this huge object. Let's actually try and find kind of an interesting one. So we've just got all these things. As you can see, it's got on toggle, on submit, on all these things, all these options. Yeah, so as you can see, yeah, we have access to this like huge event object. And that is true for all of these things. We can have a look at all of these things and see that's true for all of those, all of the buttons and messages and everything like that. It's all correctly defined. Okay, cool. So what else is kind of going to be useful to have a look at in here? Oh yeah, so you can see that we are inside our event here, inside of local. And if we come inside of here, we should be able to find our event.target. And we can have a look at our event.target, and we can have a look for things like text content, for example. So let's have a look at that one, just as a demonstration that our event.target was working. Oh yeah, so we've got our event.onClick, that's on there. Event.target, let's scroll all the way down. As you can see, it's like, of course, you do have to kind of have a look, have to scroll like quite far through these things. But yeah, there's like lots of useful information in here that you'll probably want to take a look at. Okay, so I will shut that down for the moment. And that's just kind of an alternative to sometimes using console logs. Okay, so our breakpoint is working. We're able to go in and inspect some of our variables. That's pretty good. Let's see what we want to do now. So we want to actually do task 4. So at the moment, we sort of have a bug, I would say, because if we have a look at our modal, it's like if we hit the yes button or the no button, nothing actually happens. So I think in task 4, we're going to fix that. So let's have a look at task 4. So task 4 says create a function to confirm the launch. It should close the modal and display a success report. Add it as a listener for clicks on the confirmation button. So I'm going to set a 3-minute timer for you to do that. And I've already dropped the thread into Slack, so feel free to start working on it. And don't worry, this is really nothing more than what we already just had a look at. So it's kind of very much pattern after what we did in task 3 to make task 4 work. Okay, thanks everybody. I know that that was truly a super short period of time in order to get some code in, but well done to anybody who was able to get anything in for task 4. So let's actually take a look. Okay, so whose do we want to go for? Whose shall we grab? Let's see. Justin. I'm truly choosing one at random. Justin McGraw, let's grab yours. Okay. So I'm going to drop this in, but don't worry, we will go through it line by line to just kind of to understand the code that was written. So I'm going to hit save. Okay, so what have we got? So we have our confirm button.add event listeners. That makes sense to me. So it says, yeah, create a function to confirm the launch. We know that we have the confirm button was one of our was one of the things that we already stashed in a variable. And that one is, of course, if we click on the launch, then the confirm button is this yes one. So that's what we're actually grabbing right now. And of course, because previously this wasn't working, let's see if it now works. Hey, and look at that, it does indeed work. Okay, so that means Justin's code is working. So let's kind of go and examine why. Okay, so yeah, we grabbed the confirm button. Justin added an event listener to it. That event listener was listening for clicks. And then the second argument is the callback. And what we have here is we've got modal.classlist.add off and success message.classlist.remove off. Okay, so that does both. So that both removes the modal. So that's the first thing it does. So let's try that again. So we hit launch. It's going to now, if we hit this, it should remove the modal. And also it should give us our launched success message. Okay, so that's great. However, what seems to me a slight problem is actually we do kind of have a bug, right? Because as you can see, once we have, and it doesn't matter how many times we click this button or cancel a launch or anything, we still have this success message here, but I think we want to actually get that cleared out at the right times. And also, I think I'm going to refactor this. So even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with this code at all, Justin, you did a great job. I'm still going to refactor it just to show kind of another way of doing it. So we can actually write the same code like this. We can write a function. And let's say we're going to call it confirm. And confirm is going to take an event. And don't be too freaked out about this. This is really just the same code that Justin just wrote on line 65, but we're refactoring it. So we're going to have modal.classlist.add off. So we're going to take the exact same functionality, the DOM surgery, and just drop it right in there. And then underneath this, we can do our confirm button dot add event listener. And then instead of writing the whole callback inside of there, we can just listen out for the click. And then the second argument is the callback that we just wrote up here. So we can grab this confirm and we can pass confirm in as the second argument. And this should do exactly the same thing. So let's have a look. So if we hit launch, we can click, are you sure? Yes, we hit confirm and this works. Okay. So there was absolutely nothing wrong with Justin's code. I just wanted to show you this other way of doing it too. So you have both of those options to look back on. Okay, but I think we still, if I'm not mistaken, we still have that bug to deal with. So we hit, are you sure? And we hit launch again. Our message isn't clearing. So we might have to do something to fix that. I think the thing that we have to do is I think we have to actually go all the way back to step 3 to refactor that code as well. So I think we can come in here and do, what have we got? So modal.classlist.remove off. And I think that we want to do the same thing. I think that we want to do the same thing, but in reverse for the success and failure message. So we can do something like success message dot class list dot add in this case, because we now want to remove the message from the DOM. So we're going to add the off class name to the DOM element. We can do that. And I think we want to do the same thing for the failure message dot class list dot add off. Okay, so let's see if that has fixed it. So let's have a look. So let's come back and hit on our launch, and then we can click on our are you sure? Yes. Okay, now what we expect to happen is when we click back on the launch button, we expect the line 59 to run in this case. So let's give that a go. Hurrah, as you can see, line 59 just ran. It added the off class name to that success message, making it disappear. Okay, so that's pretty good. But once again, I think that we can probably refactor this. So I think I'm going to refactor this as well. So what should we do? We should do something. We should do it just in the same way that we did task 4, I think. So we should do function, we should launch, let's call it launch. Of course, it takes an event. And now we just want to put all of this DOM surgery into here. And then we need to invoke it basically. So we can do our launch button dot add event listener. And then of course, we're still listening for a click. And we are passing in the launch function. Okay, so I think this code is actually getting a little bit more readable. Actually, and I might delete this one just to kind of clean up our code a bit. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty happy with how things are going right now. Okay, so things are readable, but they could be even more readable. So I actually think that we can really quickly do this task 8 stretch goal. And the reason I think we should do this is because you can see where it says open modal, close modal, and kill reports. Kill reports, I think that's going to refer to the success and failure message. And the reason I think this is a good idea is because, as you can see, we have things like modal.classlist.remove off. And that's repeated down here, modal.classlist.add off. Okay, well, still, it looks to me like we have the capacity to be writing some of this code over and over again. So I would like to I'll maybe do the first one, and then I'll set a 1-minute timer for everyone to do the next two. So let's come down here. So let's say we want to do the open modal. This is just a helper function that's going to make our code easier to write. So to do our open modal, I think we want to do modal. Well, actually, let's just copy the code that we already wrote. Let's copy that code. So that should be modal.classlist.remove off. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure this is right. So let's see. Modal.classlist.remove off. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to grab open modal. So I grab this this function name, copy that, and then come up to here. This is because this is the line of code that we're now putting inside the helper function. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to instead use the function open modal. Okay, so now we come here. Let's see if our launch button works in exactly the same way. And look at that, it does. Okay, so with that pattern in mind, I'm going to set just a 1-minute timer for you to fill in close modal and kill reports. So timer 1 minute, and then yes, I'm aware after that it'll be time for our final break. Oh, and then we'll do. Okay, so yeah, perhaps that was too super quick to get all that done. So I totally understand that. So I will just fill these in really quickly so everybody can have a look at this. So we're going to do function. So the close modal, once again, we're not writing any new code. We are just grabbing code that we already wrote. So actually, which one do we want to grab? So we want it to be to close modal. Actually, we actually don't think we hadn't written that yet, I don't think. Have we? Close modal. Oh yeah, here we go. Isn't it this line of code here? This is the line of code that should close the modal. So I'm going to delete that, come down and put it inside here, and then grab the helper function name, and then put it in here. And hopefully that should work exactly the same. And then, okay, so for the kill reports, that's going to be, that's one of the, well, yeah, here are both of the kill reports. Let's grab both of those. And so inside of our kill reports one, we can just add those 2 lines of code. And then we can grab our kill reports function name. And we should be able to add this one here. So this one could be open modal kill reports. And we have to invoke it. And yeah, I think that's it, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so as you can see, this actually does make our code quite a lot easier to read. So writing helper functions like that is a pretty useful thing. Okay, so let us now move on to task 5. It says create a function to cancel the launch. And I think that this is basically going to be the reverse really of task 4. So I'm going to set a 1-minute timer. Oh, and by the way, thank you to those people who were impressively able to jump in and finish off task 8. I know I really didn't give you very long to do that, so thank you to everyone who responded. So I'm now going to do task 5. Okay, so I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to set a 1-minute. Oh, wait, hold on. Didn't I say that we needed a break? I'm so sorry. We do need a break. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer for a break. I apologize. I almost completely forgot about that and blew through that. So now is a good time to take a 5-minute break. Okay, everybody, we are back. So let's have a look at where we were. We were actually just doing task 5. I can see that a few people have replied, but I'm going to give everybody another minute to make sure that they've done task 5, which again should be hopefully pretty similar to previous tasks. So just another few moments for people to get their responses into that if they can. Okay, thanks anyone else who is able to get stuff into the Slack thread. Appreciate that. I'm going to grab Hamza's. So I'm going to just drop this in and like we can go through it. But like, yes, I think the key thing here is that we're sort of following the instructions. So task 5, create a function to cancel the launch. Okay, so probably that would make sense that we need to use the, to find the cancel button, which is the one that says no on it, which we called up above cancel button. We're adding an event listener. The first argument is a click because we're listening for a click on this button right here. The second argument is the callback where we schedule the DOM surgery. So, and this of course has our DOM surgery in it. So let's now see what happens. So are you sure? So we're doing our cancel button. We're not sure. Oh wait, I don't think I saved it. Sorry. Okay, now let's see if it works. All right, so we hit the launch button and we're going to now hit no. And fantastic. Yeah, as we can see, we are, Hamza has done it right. We are canceling the launch and we get our failure message. So that's great. Okay, let's have a look. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Let's now have a look at task 6. So it says task 6, create a function that closes the modal if, and this is where it gets a bit different. So we're not going to be doing, this is going to be the one that's different from doing a click. So create a function that closes the modal if the user hits the escape key on their keyboard. Add it as an event listener for key down events on document. Okay, interesting. Why don't we go and have a look at that? So the thing that I would do if I were to see an instruction like this and not really be sure, it seems to be suggesting that there's a thing called a key down event. We know that there is certainly a thing, there's a click event, and it seems like there's also a key down event. If we want to understand how it works, probably the best thing to do is to Google, key down event. And the place that I always like to go is the Mozilla docs. So click on the Mozilla docs. And yeah, like let's just read a tiny bit about this. And I'm just trying to model this to show you kind of the way that I would approach this if I were coming to a task like this for the first time and I didn't know what to do. Googling, like figuring out how to Google stuff correctly is one of the most useful things that you can really learn. Okay, so we've Googled we've Googled key down. It says the key down event is fired when a key is pressed. Perfect, that sounds exactly what we're looking for. It says, unlike the key press event, the key down event is fired for all keys, regardless of whether they produce a character value. That seems particularly useful in this case because we know that the escape key on a keyboard doesn't produce a character value. So we know that this is the right thing. Then the very next thing I would have a look at is I wouldn't even read this stuff because that's a lot. Maybe that's details we want to get into later. Once again, scroll straight down into examples. And if we have a look, okay, so we've got document. Okay, that makes sense. It has to be on the document, not on a particular DOM element, because otherwise, how does the browser know that it's a DOM element? It sort of just needs to be on the document, like the whole thing. So document.add event listener. And as you can see, instead of passing in click, we're passing in key down instead. And then we're passing in as a second argument that callback. So we now know how this works. So let's kind of just basically copy this for a second. So I'm just going to copy this, come into task 6. I'm going to paste it, but of course I'm going to take out this log key because we don't have a function called log key. We're going to write our own callback function. So as you can see, we are just copying it completely, document.addEventListener, key down, that's what we're listening for, that's the event we are listening for. And now we want to write a function that will do something when the escape key is pressed. Okay, so let's write some pseudocode. So it's going to be like, if the event object contains the key escape, kill modal. Okay, so one thing we can do here is we can inspect using the debugger. This is a good use case for the debugger. So let's come back over to Chrome, and our debugger hasn't yet tripped because it's not going to trip until we actually do the thing that it should be doing. Until we do the user action that we're actually listening for. So let's hit the escape key. And if we, and also I think, yeah, so let's hit the escape key. That should work for us. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I don't think I hit the escape key hard enough first time. Okay, so now let's kind of pull this up and make this like, let's see what we've got to get to. How do I make this smaller? Oh, I think if I do escape, yeah, there we go. Okay. So where am I looking for now? So I'm looking for the function that we just wrote. So that's in 6. Okay. So now we want to, so as we've said in the past, like this callback function, it takes an event. The event is a really big object that lives on this DOM element. And if we hover over it like this, we can see that it has a whole bunch of information in here. And one of the very first pieces of information that we can see is that the event has a code, and it looks like the code is escape. So that seems like a useful thing. But actually, if we scroll down a bit further, we also have this thing called key, another property called key, also that's escape. Okay, interesting. So actually, you know what? You could really try this with any key. So actually, let's kind of just let that run by clicking the blue play button. We can close it. And now actually, if we open back up our DevTools, and now why don't we click, let's click another thing, like instead of escape, this time I'm going to do, oh, not there. I'm going to do H. Maybe I have to get rid of that. Okay, I'm going to click. Let's see. So instead of escape, let's see if we can get it to trigger using a different one. So yeah, okay. Why am I not triggering it? What have I done? So why is it not working? So key down. I'm really not sure. I really feel like that should be triggering it. Not sure why it's not. Is this choked up? No, the launch window doesn't need to be open, I don't think, because we're not, but yeah, thank you for that. Okay, well, in any event, oh, is it because we're listening for a key down, not a key press? That might be it. In any event, we know that we know that if we come in here, we can come and we can find that there's code or there's key. And both of these things tell us that the key that we're looking for is there. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, so now we can schedule some conditional logic to run to take advantage of this information that we discovered by looking inside the event object. So if we come back to our code, we can say something like, if the event object contains the key escape, kill modal. Okay, so that sounds like something we could translate into some JavaScript-y conditional logic. So we can start with an if statement. So we can do if event.key, and we could have used key Seems like we could also have used code, but for the moment, I'm just going to use key. If that is equal to escape, exactly as we just saw it. So let's just go back to that. So event. So event is event.key is escape, like as a sort of a string with uppercase E. So we know exactly what we're pulling. Okay, so if the event.key is strictly equal to the string escape, then we want to kill the modal. So we can do modal dot class list dot remove, and then we want to remove the off keyword. And I think at this point I can safely remove the debugger. So if the event key is equal to escape, modal.classlist.remove off. And hey, you know what? You guys can come and write some better code than I have written, and you can swap this this line here, 93, out for a helper function if you want. Yeah, look at my code and make it better. That's what I would suggest. But I'm just going to leave it like this for the moment. Now let's go and check and see if it works. So we're going to get out of the old debugger, refresh the page. Now I'm going to pull open the, oh, actually, I'm not going to look at the debugger. I'm just going to look at the functionality. Okay, so we're going to hit launch. And then in theory, if I now hit escape, which of course you can't actually see me doing, but take my word for it, hit escape, we should be canceling the modal. Are we doing it? Are we doing it? No. What have I done? Do I have some bug in my code? I feel like I might do. Oh, did I add when I should have, what did I remove when I should? Yeah, okay. See, this is probably why it would have been a smarter idea to write a, to actually use one of these. Okay, so actually I want to use close modal, is that right? Is that what I should use? I think I want to use close modal. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to delete this because that line of code is not working. So we want to do close modal because that line of code is adding that class name. Okay, so now let's see if it works. Okay, whew, let's check. Click on launch. So now in theory, if we hit escape, hurrah, it works. Okay, so that's great, fantastic. All right, so we've seen a whole bunch of different things that we can do with adding event listeners, which is to say that we are scheduling future code to run whenever it is that a user is interacting with our application. And we have seen how much of the time that's going to be clicks. You're going to be doing a lot of clicks, but also we can listen out for all kinds of other user events like key down or key press or on scroll. And later today in the module project, you're going to be looking at a whole range of these things and getting to play around with a few more of them. So that's basically what we've done now. We've figured out a way to schedule code to run when a user does something in our application. Super, super useful. But we're going to basically just talk about kind of one last concept, which is bubbling, the concept of bubbling. I actually don't think that this is really covered inside the warm-up material. So it's kind of just like one step beyond the final objective, which I think is, I can't remember what it was, objective 4 or 5. And I think it talks about, what does it talk about? Just checking. Oh, recognizing event propagation and the method used to prevent it. Okay, so we talk about, so of course you're probably familiar with a bit of the stop propagation method or the stop immediate propagation method. I think those things are in objective 5 of the warm-up materials. And we're just going to take that sort of one step further and talk about the concept of bubbling a little bit. And in doing so, we will be doing task 7. So let's get to task 7. Okay, so it says task 7, add to all elements on the page an event listener for click events. Okay, it should console log the target of the event. So we've already discussed what the target of the event is. If we are in Chrome and we, for example, click on a button, Chrome is smart, or the browser, whichever one it is smart enough to know that the thing that the user has clicked on is that particular DOM element, which is the button, which is to say that the target of the click is the button. So we know what target means. Okay, that's good. So then it's saying it should also console log the current target of the event. Okay, that seems pretty weird. What do you mean current target? We'll get into that. and I think I did preface this earlier, like probably quite a long time ago now, in the lecture, in the guided project. But we were mentioning how that because we are basically, because of the way that the browser works, we are able to click on the document. And in fact, we can go back and have a look at this. We're able to click anywhere it is on the document. And we are able to see that not only do our console logs work on the thing that we actually clicked on, which is to say we clicked on the button, but it also clicks on things that are above the button inside of the DOM tree. So when it says you click the launch button, we were also getting the you click something else. So when we say we click something else, that's at a higher level, that's somewhere on the document. And really what is going on here is that the event is bubbling up to the top. So even if we are clicking on a button, that click will bubble and it will trip up every single level of the DOM tree until it reaches the document. So if you have, for example, like you have the document at the top, and then inside it you have some divs, and inside that some more divs, and inside that some buttons, every single time you click on that button, the event, it trips up to the first div, and then the outer div, and then finally it gets to the document. So for that reason, you can put event listeners not just on the button itself, but on the next level up from the button, so long as you know that it's going to be tripped up in that chain going up to the document. And we call that concept bubbling. So a click is an event which bubbles, which is to say that if you click on a button, which is a deeply nested DOM element, even if you had an event listener on the div outside of the button, because the click bubbles from the target to the next outer div outside of that, it will trip that event listener on its way up, bubbling to the top. So I think maybe the only way that we can really get a handle on this is to have a look using some console logs. So let's try and do task 7. So what have we got? It says, okay, so add to all elements on the page an event listener for click events. So it seems to me like this is going to be similar to where we did above. We did something like document.links. Where was that? That was somewhere. I know we did that. Yeah, so we did document.links. So we're going to do a very, very similar thing here. So I'm going to grab this array.from document.links. Okay. And I come to where task 7 is. So copy that code because conceptually I want you to understand that it's the same thing. So we're going to be making an array from document, but instead of document.links, there's another thing that we can grab. There's another property that we can grab, which is document.all. And I know it's saying it has this line through it because it's saying this is deprecated, but the only reason that we're actually doing this is it's just for the purpose of demonstration. It's not really something that you're going to want to use. We're just really demonstrating the idea of bubbling. So we're still going to use document.all, even though you shouldn't, it's not a property that you should use in production. Okay, so now we've got that. So we now, document.all should give us a list of all of every single DOM node that exists inside of our application. Okay, so we've got all of those DOM nodes. Now we can do for each, so we can iterate over that JavaScript array. And so let's say like for each element, what should it do? It's telling us that it should console log the current, console log the target of the event. Okay, so we can do that. So we can do console.log, and then we want to do event.target. Okay, so we're going to console log that. And then I think what else does it say? It should also console log the current target of the event. So the current target of the event is is not, for example, like the button itself, but it is like whatever the next one up is, or the next one up is. So the current target is going to change every single time we do this. The target, like the event.target, will always be the same. It will always be whatever the most deeply nested thing that you have clicked on is. But the current target will be whatever other target it is as we kind of, as that bubbles up. So that's something that is going to change because it's going to trip from the button to the div, all the way up to the document. So we want to console log that as well. So we can do console.log event dot, and there's something called the current target. So we can console log both of those. And then just to make this super clear, I'm just going to console.log a new line, because this should hopefully like keep it really clear what we're doing. But also this is still going to be a bit confusing, because we are also we need some strings inside of these two console logs, so we know what we're looking at. So I'm going to write a string in each of these. And okay, so for this one, I'm going to say something like, I'll use this emoji to make it a bit clearer, so we can have this target, say target, and we can use this like current target to represent current target. So current target. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for all of the consoles in this page, because I want to comment out the other ones that are not useful to us for the moment. So commented at that one. Now we're going to comment at that one, and that one, and this one, and that one, and that one. Oh my goodness, there were so many. Okay, so we also want to comment at this one. So now I think we should just have what we need. We should just have the task 7 one. So let's have a look at that. Okay. Oh, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. So we've got, let me see. Oh, of course, I forgot to actually add my event listener. Oops. Okay, so let's just make this super clear. I will put these console logs out here. So yeah, I jumped straight ahead to the actual, what are they called? Console logs without actually adding the event listener. So we know that we have the lm parameter is going to stand for like each and every DOM element on the page as we iterate through the document.all. So we can do lm.add event listener. And of course, we're listening for a click. And then we are going to have this. The second argument is going to be a function which takes an event. And the thing that we want this function to do is simply do all of these console logs. So I'm now going to put all of these back and hit save. Okay. So now I think the best thing to do is actually for you to really kind of have a look at this yourself. And I would encourage you after this guided project to really play around with it. But yeah, let's basically start having a click around and see what we get. Okay, so if we click just somewhere randomly on the document, and actually I'm going to put this on the side. All right. So click. Okay, so we get the current target, and as you can see, the current target is this whole thing here, which is basically like the document. It's the whole thing. It's the whole document. And the current target, as you can see, is the same at this point in time as the target. So the thing on which we've clicked is both the most deeply nested DOM element. In this case, it's actually the top level DOM element. It's the document. And so the target and the current target are identical because the document is at the top. There's nowhere else. There's no higher level for the event to bubble up to. So what happens if we click on, for example, like the launch button? Okay, so actually I'm going to clear the console just to make it like super clear. Okay, I'm going to clear the console and do that again. Okay, so let's click on the launch button and now let's see what we get. So what do we have now? Okay, we have a lot more. Okay, so target. First target is the button, and the current target is also the button. Now we can see bubbling actually taking place because the target remains, as always, it remains the button. Like the very target is the button itself that we've clicked on, the thing that the user has clicked on. But the current target, as we can see, the event has bubbled up to the next level. So now the current target is the div that contains the button. It's the parent container of the button. Then at the next bubbling up, the target always remains the same. It's always going to be the button. And then the next one up, it's going to be the body because that is the parent that contains the container in the DOM tree. And then the very last one is, once again, the target is itself the button, always the same thing. It's always the most deeply nested thing. And the current target is now the document, which is to say the whole document. So as you can see, because we have set event listeners on every single DOM element, every div, every button, every link, every whatever else is in there. I think that's it. Oh, H1s, H2s, probably all that kind of thing. We set event listeners on all of them. And so now when we click something that's deeply nested, like the button, we trigger this bubbling whereby we see that the actual event like bubbles all the way up from the target to the document. And this is kind of the visual proof of that. Okay. So one thing to also know is, in case you ever want to do this, you can do this. We can do event dot stop propagation. And if we do this, let's actually have a look at what happens now. Okay, so now we've just added this event dot stop propagation. So now we're now going to observe what difference that makes. Okay, so first of all, we're going to just click on the document. As you can see, that's just like it was before. We're just clicking on a random place in the document. The target is the whole document. The current target is also the whole document. There is no higher level than the document itself, so there is no further bubbling to happen. So now I'm going to clear the console, and now we're going to try clicking again on the launch button, which we know is quite deeply nested. So we click on that. And hey, as you can see this time, because we have stopped propagation, we have prevented the bubbling phase from occurring. And so what has happened now is that the target is the button and the current target is the button, but this event is not like bubbling all the way up to the top anymore. Why do we care about bubbling? So just to really quickly tie this up, I'm going to comment out the stop propagation once again. And actually exactly why bubbling is so useful will become clearer maybe tomorrow as well when we start adding many more event listeners to things. But okay, so let's have a look at this. So I'm going to click on the launch again. And basically what we can see is if we go up to the top, of course, we can put an on-click listener on the button itself. However, because the click event bubbles all the way up, we could actually set our event listener to live on, for example, the div that contains the button. And the reason we might want to do this is maybe inside that div, there are 10 buttons. And instead of writing separate on clicks for each and every button inside that div, we can probably write one event listener, put it on the parent, and then we can actually listen to events that happen on any of the buttons inside it. So if that doesn't feel super clear right now, I totally understand, I get that. But I promise you, over the next kind of week or so, as we start using more and more event listeners, you will that this bubbling idea will come back and become very useful to you. So that is all I have for you today. I'm very much looking forward to see all of you tomorrow. I would say that a really great thing that you might want to do is go to office hours. One reason for that is because if you don't have anything, if you have something not working like Node or NPM, that is the very first thing that you should go and make sure that Andy helps out with that. And also in general, if you have any questions about the module project today or the guided project this morning, feel free to go and ask Andy about it. So everybody is free. That is the end of the guided project. I know that a few people are saying they might are having problems with git fetch and git reset. As far as I can tell, it's working. So that's something to maybe restart, because I'm pretty sure if I come here, let's see, yeah, this is all set up and it really should be working. I mean, I can, yeah. But if it really isn't, do come back to me on Slack, and I will try to, I'll look into that and make sure everybody has all of the code. But yeah, as far as I will leave this up for a while just to make sure that, to make sure that anybody who needs it has got access to it. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you all tomorrow.